Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, May 10th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's been a very busy day. It was a busy weekend. You know, we had a great show on Sunday, the African History Network show. You know, we're here 6 days a week. So on today's show, I saw this story a couple of days ago. Let's see. I saw the story back Thursday and Friday. And we've dealt with systemic racism when it comes to housing and housing appraisals, okay? Appraising the value of homes. Well, there's a story out of Indianapolis which continues this this tradition, okay, when it comes to racism in home appraisals. An African American woman in Indianapolis, her home appraisal value jumped $100,000 after Black identifiers were removed, after African American identifiers were removed, and after a white male friend of hers sat in as the homeowner. Now, we've seen stories about this recently. We've talked about this here on the African History Network show. There was a story out of San Francisco back in February. African American couple lowballed by $500,000 in home appraisal, showing legacy of discrimination and racism on California home ownership. This was an article from ABC Channel 7 Chicago, which dealt with the same phenomenon. So this ties into also history, and this ties into a history of things like redlining and being discriminated against when it comes to home ownership and the Federal Housing Act of 1949. So there's a deep history behind this. So we're going to talk some about this on today's show. Fox 59, the Fox affiliate in Indianapolis, has an article about this. The Griot has an article about this as well, thegriot.com. Then I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, May 7th. And one of the things we talked about was Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms announcing that she's not running for re-election. And this shocked everybody. She shook up the world. Like Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay shook up the world February 25th, 1964, when he defeated Sonny Liston. She shook up the world, shook up the political world. Some people are asking the question, why? She's a rising star in the Democratic Party. Some people are asking the question, why is she not running for re-election? And we had some interesting perspectives, but I talked about the fact that that's a thankless job and it's a tough job. And also, a lot of times it's difficult dealing with Negroes, just to be honest with you. Oftentimes it's difficult dealing with Negroes. And then there's an investigation into her predecessor, Mayor Kasim Reed. All that's going on. So it was an interesting segment that we did on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm going to share that segment with you also on today's show. And then today is the anniversary of the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina being enacted. The Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina, which came about because of the Stono Rebellion of 1739 in South Carolina. The Stono Rebellion was one of the largest slave rebellions in the British colonies. So we'll talk some about the Stono Rebellion of 1739 and the Negro Act of 1740. The Negro Act of 1740 and the Negro Act of 1740 was put in place to regulate the movements of enslaved Africans also in South Carolina. Okay. And then the Negro Act of 1740 is going to lead to what's known as the um, Sundry Moore Act, the Sundry Moore Act of 1790 in South Carolina also. Okay. So that's the dealing with the petition of the free sundry Moors in South Carolina in 1790. So we'll talk about that as well. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Or visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for our email newsletter there as well. I want to remind you, you can still register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays. We have a new section that started up on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week, 18-hour online course that I teach. Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch from around the world. We do the class live, and then all the sections are recorded. All the sessions are recorded, so they're archived. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. $80, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Online course. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. And I also taught the class in February and March of 2021. So all those sessions are archived as well. So as soon as you register, you can watch that also. We're going to post a link here, and it's also on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, Ta-Nehisi, Nubia. We deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors also. So you're going to learn a lot in the class. All right, we're coming up here on the break. So there's a story out of Indianapolis, story of Carlette Duffy. Carlette Duffy. She's an African-American female, and she's calling out discrimination in the real estate industry. She lives in a historically African-American neighborhood, and she was confused when she had her home appraised twice. She was confused when she had her home appraised twice, and the figure came back below or what she paid for the home back in 2017. So she made some slight changes to her home and had a white male friend sit in for her, and the home's value reached over $100,000. Fox Channel 59, the affiliate in Indianapolis, has this story. Now, with help from the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, Carlette Duffy filed a complaint with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We're going to talk about all this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, how's everybody doing? Stand by. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Then do PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. Stand by. We're back from break in 3 minutes. How's everybody doing? All right, back from break in 2 minutes. All right, we've got Willie, Cecilia, TC, Denise. Everybody stand by. We're back from break in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, May 10th, 2021, and we're live. Hope everybody's doing well. All right, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, and also on 910 AM Superstation WFDF's Facebook fan page as well. Also, if you like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, you can do so through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. If you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ TheAHNShow, SHOW. It'll show my name, it'll say Michael, and show my picture there as well. All right, I want to go to the story here. We're going to go to clip one here in just a second, Shakita. So, this story out of Indianapolis, it's a very, very interesting story here. And there was one similar the New York Times had back in, what month was this? August of 2020. And this story here, there's a big story the New York Times did. August 25th, 2020. Black homeowners face discrimination in appraisals. I don't know how many people saw this article. Black homeowners face discrimination in appraisals. Companies that value homes for sale or refinancing are bound by law not to discriminate. Black homeowners say it happens anyway. So this article talked about, it told the story of Abina and Alex Horton. Abina and Alex Horton. And Abina is African American, Alex is white. They are a couple. And they wanted to take advantage of low home refinance rates brought on by the coronavirus crisis. Now, this article is from August 25th, 2020. Okay. So in June of 2020, they took the first step in that process, welcoming a home appraiser into their 4-bedroom home, 4-bath ranch style house in Jacksonville, Florida. The Hortons live just minutes from the Ortega River in a predominantly white neighborhood of 1950s homes that tend to sell for $350,000 to $550,000. They had expected their home to appraise for around $450,000, but the appraiser felt differently, assigning a value of $330,000 to the home. And Abina Horton, who was African American, immediately suspected discrimination. So they the houses tend to sell for $350,000 to $550,000. The Hortons expected their home to appraise for around $450,000. The appraiser valued the home at $330,000. So being a Horton who's African American automatically suspected discrimination. So the couple's bank, the Hortons bank, agreed that the value was off and ordered a second appraisal. But before the new appraiser could arrive, Abina Horton, who is an attorney, began an experiment. She took all family photos off the mantle. Instead, she hung up a series of oil paintings of her husband, Alex Horton, who is white. She hung up a series of paintings of Alex Horton and his grandparents that had been in storage, okay, to portray a white family living in the house. Books by Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison were taken off the shelves. And now, okay, this could be a joke, but it may not be. I mean, I may get in trouble. I don't know, whatever. But okay, if she had any paintings up, if she had any pictures up of Malcolm X and Minister Farrakhan, I think she probably took those down too. Okay, just like could be a joke in there too. I don't know, but what the hell? But if you had any, if you have any pictures up of Malcolm X, what have you, you probably had probably took those down also. Okay, okay. If she had a if she had a copy of The Destruction of Black Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams, probably put that in storage. Don't have any black books around. Don't have the autobiography of Malcolm X. Don't have your Rugu, an African-centered European African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior by Dr. Marie Mahani. Don't have that around. Okay. Don't have Dr. John Henrik Clark's book, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism. Don't have any of that around. Okay, so you got had all those books. All right. So holiday photo cards sent by friends were edited so that only those showing white families were left on display. On the day of the appraisal, Abina Horton took the couple's 6-year-old son on a shopping trip to Target and left her husband, who's white, Alex Horton, alone at home to answer the door. The new appraiser gave their home a value of $465,000, a more than 40% increase from the first appraisal. So we've heard numerous stories about this. Okay, I'm sharing this article. It's an extensive article from the New York Times. One, everybody read the article here. Black homeowners face discrimination in appraisals. See, this ties into wealth. This ties into generational wealth. This ties into family wealth, median wealth of African Americans. And the Brookings Institute has a study that deals with how, and we've talked about this here on the show before, how African American homes are valued at $156 billion less than comparable white homes owned by white people. It's called a segregation tax. A segregation tax. If you look at, let's see, Brookings, okay, we'll look at the one from the Brookings Institute. Hold on. I want to go to curbed.com. There's an article from curbed.com. This one right here. Let me pull this up. Curbed.com. Then we're going to go to the clip, Shakita. There's an article, how a segregation tax is costing Black American homeowners $156 billion. How a segregation tax is costing Black American homeowners $156 billion. A new Brookings Gallup report finds residential property in majority Black neighborhoods is consistently undervalued. This is from November 27, 2018. When this study came out, Ali Velshi on MSNBC interviewed Andre Perry from the Brookings Institute about this study. Now, African Americans, long accustomed to facing more hurdles on the road to home ownership, may consistently find their investments in residential property undervalued, according to a new joint Brookings Institution and Gallup study. Gallup, the Gallup poll, okay, the Gallup organization, Brookings Institution and Gallup. According to the study called The Devaluation of Assets in Black Neighborhoods, the case of residential property, the devaluation of assets in Black neighborhoods, the case of residential property, okay? According to this study, this joint study, owner-occupied homes are undervalued by the real estate market across all majority Black neighborhoods and consistently sell or are appraised for lower prices at an average of $48,000 per home. Owner-occupied homes are undervalued by the real estate market across all majority Black neighborhoods and consistently sell or are appraised for lower prices at an average of $48,000 per home. Nationwide, this amounts to $156 billion in cumulative losses, what the report dubs a segregation tax. So we have to understand racism. Once again, racism is not about not liking people, calling people racial epithets, calling people names, calling people racial slurs. That's not racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege that is distributed based upon race. Racism is a power structure. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to opportunity, access to education, jobs, money, healthcare, media, etc. And they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is what racism is. Racism is the power structure that comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. And this is for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival. This is what racism is. So oftentimes when we see these conversations about racism on MSNBC or CNN and things like this, many times they don't clearly define what racism is, so people come away confused and they equate racism to feelings. And then you have some people say, oh, well, African Americans can be just as racist as white people. No, we can't. Racism is a group relationship. Racism is a team sport. Racism is a group-to-group relationship. We don't have enough power to oppress white people. Not in this country. We African Americans as a group don't have enough power to oppress white people. So you have to understand history to understand racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay, so I brought up the story from the New York Times because that story is referenced in this one here from the Griot and Fox 59, dealing with Carlette Duffy in Indianapolis. Okay, let's go to this clip, Shakita. Clip one. So this deals with Carlette Duffy, an African-American woman whose home appraisal jumped $100,000 after Black identifiers were removed and a white man was added. Let's take it off.
And you just feel so helpless.
Yeah, start it from the beginning. So Carlette Duffy
was in the whole thing. Carlette Duffy wanted to refinance her home in this neighborhood just outside of downtown Indianapolis, but two separate appraisals valued the house at the same or less than what she paid in 2017. Frustrated by the process, she met Amy Nelson with the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, who spoke at a community meeting about this New York Times article examining discrimination in home appraisals. So I decided to do exactly what was done in the article. I took down every photo of my family from my house. I took every piece of ethnic artwork out. Duffy asked a white male friend to sit in for her at a new appraisal. It came back at double the first two, valuing her home more than $100,000 higher. I was so angry that I had to go through all of that. Just to be treated fairly, I had to go through all of that. It was pretty staggering. Nelson and Duffy recently filed 2 housing discrimination complaints, asking the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to investigate the difference in the appraisals. Nelson believes bias played a role and points to the neighborhood comparisons that were used to determine the home's value. And whether or not those comps were fairly selected is something that is the basis of the complaints that we have filed. Duffy hopes that our case could serve as a catalyst to ensure the process is fair for everyone, no matter their background. I'm doing this for my daughter. I'm doing this for my granddaughter. So that when they come against obstacles, they will know that you can stand up. You can say, this is not right. In Indianapolis, Jill Glavin, Fox 59 News.
Pretty eye-opening report there, Jill. Thank you. We reached out to the Appraisal Institute, which represents appraisers around the country. In a statement, the group said, in part, when we see even one story of a consumer who feels they were treated differently because of their race, it's very concerning because they say that goes against everything we stand for. Appraisers, they say, take a lot of pride in being an objective source of real estate value information. If anyone believes they've experienced discrimination or bias in an appraisal, we encourage them to report it to the appropriate fair housing agency or state appraiser regulatory agency. We also reached out to the companies named in the complaints. We've not yet received any comment. One of them told us by phone he had not been made aware of the complaint. We'll keep you posted.
Okay, pause right there. Okay, so that's from Fox 59 in Indianapolis. Fox 59 has an article that is referenced in the article from the Grio. Indianapolis homeowner files discrimination complaint after removal of black identifiers leads to $100,000 appraisal increase. Indianapolis homeowner. Now notice the difference between the titles of the two articles. So you have a Fox affiliate, Fox 59, white-owned corporation. Okay, I'm not bringing this up because it's Fox. The Fox affiliates, a lot of times they're different than the Fox News channel. Okay, a lot of times they're not crazy like the Fox News channel. Depends upon the area you're in. But Indianapolis homeowner files discrimination complaint after removal of black identifiers leads to $100,000 appraisal increase. So that's the name of the article from Fox 59. Name of the article from the Grio, which is African American owned and operated, owned by Byron Allen. Name of the article from the Grio is a black woman's home appraisal jumps to $100,000 after black identifiers removed. Okay, so notice in the title they identify her as an African American woman, whereas in the title from Fox 59 she wasn't identified as an African American woman. Okay, so there's a difference in when you have African American ownership as opposed to oftentimes white ownership. Black woman's home appraisal jumps $100,000 after black identifiers removed. So in the story, it goes on to say, so Carlette Duffy read the article from the New York Times that I showed you. So she did what Abina Horton did in the New York Times article. Abina Horton said, okay, you want to play that game, we're going to do you one better. We're going to make this look like white people live here to bump up the value of the home. Okay. So Carlette Duffy read this article that I encourage everybody to read. Black homeowners face discrimination in appraisals. Companies that value homes for sale or refinancing are bound by law not to discriminate. Black homeowners say it happens anyway. This is from August 25th, 2020, updated August 27th, 2020, from the New York Times. So if we go back and look at the one from the Grio, it's very, very interesting article here. Column numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600. If you have a quick question or comment. We're going to talk about Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms here in just a minute. So Carlette Duffy said, I decided to do exactly what was done in the article. I took down every photo of my family from my house. I took every piece of ethnic artwork out. So any African artwork, I took it out. I displayed my degrees. I removed certain books. Okay. After applying the new strategy and asking her white male friend to sit in for her new appraisal, the figure came back almost double. She said, I get choked up. Even thinking about it now, because I was so excited and so happy. And then I was so angry that I had to go through all of that just to be treated fairly. Now, Duffy was able to purchase. So what happened was she wanted to purchase uh, 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 her grandparents' home. Okay. So now this ties into not just accumulation of wealth, but being able to tap into your home value, the equity in your home, to be able to do other things, to be able to acquire property, to be able to start a business, to be able to help your children out. Okay. She wanted to buy her parents' home. The homeowner's goal was to refinance her home, to use the equity in her home to purchase her grandparents' house, okay, to acquire another asset. When the odd appraisal figures came back, she knew exactly what she needed to do. She had read recently about a similar situation in the New York Times article. So every African American needs to read this New York Times article, right? Game recognizes game. We need to beat these people at their own game. Game recognizes game. We need to beat these people. Yeah, we want to stamp out white supremacy and racism. But in the meantime, we need to whip white supremacy and racism ass. And this is how you do it. We have to outsmart these people. This is how you do it. Game recognizes game. So everybody needs to read that article from the New York Times. Read this one here from thegrio.com also. And then tap into the equity in our homes. Use that to acquire assets. Okay. So Carlette Duffy was able to purchase her grandparents' home, and said she is happy she spoke up. However, the homeowner and the FHCCI are requesting the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development look into the discrimination. Now, FHCCI Executive Director Amy Nelson said whether or not those comparables, the estimated values of the homes, the comps, whether they were fairly selected is something that is the basis of the complaints that we have filed. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so they talk about the New York Times article, and then the statement shared, they're taking the time to educate themselves about potential bias and working with members of Congress like House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters on, quote, how to bolster fair housing programs and develop solutions to mortgage credit problems. All right. So see, this ties into policy also. I want to back up here for a second. Let's see here. Okay. So we are interested in we have a project team that is going to review research and reports about diversity, equity, and inclusion in appraisal. Whether or not we agree with someone's research methodology, we want to better understand what we might learn or glean from other people's work. We are interested in these studies and the researchers' perspectives, and we want to understand their findings and viewpoints. We also are participating in the Brookings Institution Challenge to address systemic racism in the housing market. The Brookings Institution, they were the ones who did that joint study dealing with the segregation tax and how African American homes are valued at $156 billion less than comparable white homes. We also are participating in the Brookings Institution Challenge to address systemic racism in the housing market, sitting side by side with those in the greater real estate world and people who are very much outside of the profession. The more people who can experience economic opportunity, the better off they will be, and the better off all of our communities will be. We want to help advance policies that enable economic opportunity, knowing that care must be taken to avoid unintended consequences from policy changes, such as placing consumers in upside down mortgages or fueling housing bubbles. Okay. And this is a statement from the Appraisal Institute, President Rodman Schley, the Appraisal Institute. Okay. Now, the statement shared, they're taking the time to educate themselves about potential bias and working with members of Congress like House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters on, quote, how to bolster fair housing programs and develop solutions to mortgage credit problems, end quote. Okay, now, Rodman Schley concluded by mentioning that the institution has been amplifying internal initiatives to bring about positive change over the last 2 years. Quote, we recognize that recruiting for greater diversity will make us stronger and more representative of the communities we work in and contribute to greater cultural awareness, end quote. Okay, check out the rest of this article here in its entirety, because this also ties into policy. This ties into law as well. This deals with history. This deals with generational wealth, being able to tap into the wealth in your home and to start businesses, invest in businesses, uh, help pay for your children's college, all different types of things like this. Okay. All right. So read that article from thegrio.com. Black woman's home appraisal jumps $100,000 after Black identifiers removed. We're going to go to clip 2 here quickly, Shakita. So on Friday, May 7th, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta did a press conference announcing that she was not going to seek re-election. Okay. And this shocked everybody. We talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go to this clip.
Let's now go to Atlanta, where a huge announcement was made today. News broke last night that the mayor of Atlanta was not going to be seeking re-election. Keisha Lance Bottoms, who held a fundraiser with President Joe Biden in March, raised $500,000, announced that she was not seeking re-election. There was initial speculation saying she'd be taking a corporate job at Walgreens. She said that wasn't the case. She gave no specific reason as to why she is choosing now to step back. This is her news conference today.
This has been my highest honor to serve as mayor of this city. And many of you all have heard me speak of my family's history in the city, going back almost 100 years. My grandmother would tell me how her her father, who was a child of people who were once enslaved from Crawfordsville, Georgia, packed up a horse and buggy, and they made their journey to Atlanta. My family moved to the west side of Atlanta, and they found community, and they found purpose, and they found a way to make the lives of their children better. And I stand here on their shoulders. So my love for this city was a love planted in my heart long before I was formed in my mother's womb. And I wish that I could tell you there was a moment or that there was a thing. But when you have faith and you pray for God's wisdom and guidance, in the same way that it was very clear to me almost 5 years ago that I should run for mayor of Atlanta, it is abundantly clear to me today that it is time to pass the baton on to someone else.
I'm reading a story in the Land Journal-Constitution right now where a close friend said that Mayor Bottoms, in her first year in office, really began to have second thoughts about why she wanted the job. In fact, this is a quote, she just didn't have her heart in it, said one close friend. Michael, this is interesting because, and it's shocking to a lot of different people, because she barely won when she ran by little more than 400 votes. Right. She beat a white councilwoman who was trying to become the first white mayor of Atlanta since 1972. Also, she, like I say, had the fundraiser. According to a internal poll that was leaked, she had a 68% approval rating. But there have been lots of issues there, a significant spike in crime in Atlanta, some folks saying she felt detached or out of touch. And now what this has done, it has now thrown open the door. Many people were expected, only a couple of candidates had announced they were going to oppose her. Many saw her as a shoe-in. And what you have now are folks saying, can Atlanta continue having a black mayor? The state legislature, they have been trying to take control of the airport. That is the crown jewel of the state of Georgia. And of course, one of the busiest airports in the world. And so what do you make of this surprise announcement by Keisha Lance Bottoms, who many were talking about, who turned down a spot in the Biden administration and now is saying, I want out of politics completely?
Brother, on one hand, it's a shocker. On the other hand, is not necessarily a shocker when you understand the trials and tribulations of being a big city mayor. Okay, that is a hard job, and not only that, you're dealing with a dumbass governor, Brian Kemp. See, it'd be different if you got support from the governor. She really don't have support from the governor. She has a white supremacist Trump supporter who is doing the bidding of Donald Trump, signed into law SB 202, the voter restriction bill. So I've never served in political office, but I've been involved in writing public policy here in the city of Detroit. And I can tell you, man, a lot of times it's a thankless job. And then also she has small children as well. And you get to the point where you start asking yourself, okay, see, you always go in with enthusiasm and all these things that you want to change. And then you get in and you see, you really don't know how things really work until you really sit in that seat and you get all these different elements coming at you. Okay. And then you start getting to the point, you ask the question, is this really worth it? Do I want to do this for another 4 years? Do I want to sacrifice time for my family? Do I want my blood pressure to raise? And then you had those, police shootings as well. You had the shootings involving the 2 college students. You had Rashard Brooks, things like this. And you start realizing, okay, do I want to endure this for another 4 years? This is not what I thought it was going to be. So on the one hand, it's a shock. On the other hand, I can understand. She says, look, I want to do something else. I may not know what it is, but I want to do something else.
All right, she did not rule out a future role in politics,
pause right there,
Brittany.
Pause right there, okay, we run out of time. Pause right there. Yeah, and see, the other thing is dealing with Negroes oftentimes can wear you out also. I'm not talking about all African Americans in the city, but dealing with some crazy ones. You start wondering, do I want to keep doing this? And then you have the investigation, the federal investigation to her predecessor, Kasim Reed, as well. Don't know what that's going to find out, but yeah. So we'll see what happens in Atlanta. Hopefully Atlanta does not get a white mayor like Detroit. I'm just saying. Hopefully you don't want that to happen. All right. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also broadcast on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Those watching on my Facebook page and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a little while longer. We'll talk about the Stono Rebellion of 1739 in South Carolina, one of the largest slave rebellions in the British colonies. And we'll also talk about the passing of the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina, which passed on May 10th, 1740 in South Carolina as a result of the Stono Rebellion. All right, thanks for listening to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. All right, we'll be here for a few more minutes. How's everybody doing? We'll be here for a few more minutes. Let's talk about the Stono Rebellion. Also, who still needs to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right. So we just posted the link here. You can also register at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips, book references, articles, and we deal with we'll also deal with the ancient African presence in the Americas, including in this land that we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago, before even Native Americans came into existence. This is one of the books that I reference, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. He deals with the African presence in the Americas going back at least 56,000 years ago in South Carolina. The Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet. And at least 51,700 years ago, well, 56,000 years ago in Brazil, 51,700 years ago in South Carolina. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
Are you getting ready for fall or winter? We have the solution for all seasonal clothing needs. Kemeticwear.com is the go-to online source for Kemetic African fashion and lifestyle products with a contemporary twist. We're committed to offering unique styles reflecting our African heritage. Kemeticwear.com is inspired by KemeticScribes.com to influence our people in learning and showing pride. Please visit our website at Kemeticwear.com.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new uprise.
Hi, I'm Joel Wilson, President and CEO of JCW Computer Consulting LLC, a technology implementation firm with over 20 years of satisfying customers. We offer a full spectrum of industry top-tier branded services. We are an authorized partner or reseller for Lenovo, Zoom, T-Mobile, Microsoft 365 and Surface tablets, Google Workspace, Acer, Asus, Samsung, PCmatic security software, and many more. Our online store features laptops, Chromebooks, computers, printers, accessories, and software. Businesses, take advantage of our free 1-hour Zoom tech consultation and know we offer top nationwide high-speed internet service providers, voice over IP, and cellular phone services. Home users, don't miss our current in-stock Chromebook inventory. Please visit us at jcwcc.com or call 215-879-6701.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right, if you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at AHNshow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Email us at AHNshow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we'll let you know how you can advertise your African American owned business with the African History Network show. Current promotion: buy 1 month, get 1 month free. All right, so let's talk about the Stono Rebellion of 1739. And the Stono Rebellion led to the passing of the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina. And then this also ties into what's known as the Petition of the Free Sundry Moors of South Carolina in 1790. So let's look at pbs.org, a public broadcasting system. They have some information on the Stono Rebellion. Also, blackpast.org has an article as well. So in South Carolina, September 9th, 1739, a band of enslaved Africans marched down the road carrying banners that proclaimed liberty. They marched down the road carrying banners that proclaim liberty. And I want to blow this up some here so see it. Okay, so they shout out the same word, liberty, led by an Angolan named Jemmy, 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 led by an Angolan named Jemmy. The men and women continued to walk south, recruiting more slaves along the way. By the time they stopped to rest for the night, their numbers will have approached 100. Now, what exactly triggered the Stono Rebellion in 1739 is not clear. Many African slaves knew that small groups of runaways had made their way from South Carolina to Florida. Okay. Many slaves knew that small groups of runaways had made their way from South Carolina to Florida, where they had been given freedom and land. Looking to cause unrest within the English colonies, the Spanish had issued a proclamation stating that any African slave who deserted to St. Augustine in Florida would be given the same treatment. They would be given land because Florida was free territory. This was Spanish territory. So you often see, once again, the way slavery evolves in this country is different than how we think it evolved in this country. And then also you have to understand that it wasn't just the English here in this land. You're going to have the Spanish, you're going to have the Dutch, okay? So Florida was Spanish territory and it was free territory. This is one of the reasons why the U.S. wanted to acquire Florida, because a lot of Africans would run away and run into Florida, which was free territory. So Florida was free territory up until about 1821 till it becomes U.S. territory. Okay, let's continue here. So certainly this influenced being able to go into Florida and get land. Certainly this influenced the potential rebels and made them willing to accept their situation. A fall epidemic had disrupted the colonial government in nearby Charleston, and word had just arrived that England and Spain were at war. Word had just arrived that England and Spain were at war, raising hopes that the Spanish in St. Augustine, Florida, would give a positive reception to enslaved Africans escaping from Carolina plantations. So escaping from the British colonies, going into Spanish territories, going into Florida. But what may have actually triggered the Stono Rebellion on September 9th, 1739, was the soon to be enacted Security Act. The soon to be enacted Security Act. In mid-August of 1739, a Charleston newspaper announced the Security Act. Now, this was a response to the white fears of insurrection. The act required that all white men carry firearms to church on Sundays, a time when whites usually did not carry weapons, and African slaves were allowed to work for themselves. Now, this is in the South Carolina colony. This is before the American Revolutionary War of 1775, 1783. This is before the Declaration of Independence of 1776. And it's important to understand, as we've talked about before, that different colonies have different laws. All the colonies don't have all the same laws. Different colonies have different laws and variations of different laws. Okay. So what may be the law in one colony, it may be different or a little different or what have you in other colonies. So in mid-August of 1739, a Charleston newspaper announced the Security Act. Now, the Security Act was a response to white people's fears of insurrection. The Security Act required that all white men carry firearms to church on Sundays, a time when whites usually did not carry weapons and enslaved Africans were allowed to work for themselves. Anyone who did not comply with the Security Act by September 29, 1739, would be subjected to a fine. Now, whatever triggered the Stono Rebellion of September 39, early in the morning on September 9th, 1739, a Sunday, about 20 enslaved Africans gathered near the Stono River in St. Paul's Parish, less than 20 miles from Charleston, South Carolina. The African slaves went to a shop that sold firearms and ammunition. They armed themselves, then killed 2 shopkeepers who were manning the shop. From there, the band of Africans walked to the house of a Mr. Godfrey, where they burned the house and killed Mr. Godfrey and his son and daughter. They headed south. It was not yet dawn when they reached Wallace's Tavern. Because the innkeeper at the tavern was kind to his slaves, his life was spared. The white inhabitants of the next 6 or so houses they reached were not so lucky. All of them were killed. The enslaved Africans belonging to Thomas Rose successfully hid their master, but they were forced to join the rebellion. They were these Africans who hid their master would later be rewarded. Okay, other slaves willingly joined the rebellion. By 11 o'clock that morning, 11 a.m., the group was about 50 strong. The few whites whom they now encountered were chased and killed. Though one individual, Lieutenant Governor Bull, B-U-L-L, eluded the rebels and rode to spread the alarm. Now, the enslaved Africans stopped in a large field late that afternoon, just before reaching the Edisto River, E-D-I-S-T-O. They had marched over 10 miles and killed between 20 and 25 white people. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere between 20 and 100 whites had set out in pursuit of these enslaved Africans. When they approached the rebels, the Africans fired 2 shots. The whites returned fire, bringing down 14 of the African slaves. By dusk, about 30 Africans were dead, and at least 30 had escaped. Most were captured over the next month, then executed. The rest were captured over the following 6 months, all except one who remained a fugitive for 3 years. Uncomfortable with the increasing number of Africans, for some time, the white colonists had been working on a Negro Act, A-C-T, a Negro Act. Now, this wasn't a stand-up comedy act like the minstrel show created by Thomas Dartmouth Rice about 100 years later, about 1828, 1829. This Negro Act wasn't a minstrel show. This is a law to regulate and have greater control over the movement of Africans. So uncomfortable with the increasing number of Africans for some time, why didn't you set them free if you were so uncomfortable with the increasing number? I just find that interesting. This is like, it's like, we got more and more Africans. We don't know what to do. We're scared. Well, why don't you free them and stop treating them less than human? Maybe you won't have all these rebellions. The white colonists had been working on a Negro Act that would limit the privileges of African slaves. Now, this was quickly finalized and approved after the Stono Rebellion. No longer would African slaves be allowed to grow their own food, assemble in groups, earn their own money, or learn to read. See, I cannot stress this enough. The way we think the history evolved in this country and history of slavery is not how it actually happened. Different colonies had different laws. It was legal for slaves in Virginia to be able to learn to read and write until 1831 in Virginia. You know what happened in 1831? The Nat Turner Rebellion. The Nat Turner Rebellion in 1831 happened. And Nat Turner was literate. He could read or write. After the Nat Turner Rebellion, the state legislature passed a law that made it illegal for slaves to be able to read and write. Before that, they could. Different colonies, different states and colonies had different laws. 1831, this is after the U.S. Constitution is signed and ratified 1787, 1788. So now you have states, okay? Prior to that, and before the American Revolutionary War, you have colonies. So you have colonies in 1739. You don't have states, you have colonies. Okay, they're still under British rule. Different colonies, different states had different rules. There's some instances where you're going to have some African slaves who can earn money various ways. Now, that's not the majority of them, but you do have these things that take place. So, once again, this is why the book Before the Mayflower is so important. Most Americans are woefully ignorant of history, and most African Americans don't understand history. But Americans are woefully ignorant of history in general. And most African Americans don't understand history. Okay, this is why this book here is so important. Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., especially chapter 2. And this is one of the books we use in the online course because he deals with how this whole institution of slavery evolves. In 1619, and watch the 2-hour interview I just did with Dr. Darrell Scott, history professor at Howard University. Okay, because we dealt with the myth that the 13th Amendment has a loophole in it that then led to mass incarceration. And that's the premise of Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th. That's false. That's not historically accurate. That's false. 13th Amendment don't have nothing to do with mass incarceration. 13th Amendment is based upon the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. That don't have nothing to do with no mass incarceration. That's just a total misunderstanding of history. Okay. And it's on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. We did like 2 hours and 12 minutes. We also dealt with the 1619 project and some of the historical inaccuracies in the 1619 project as well. I'm not bashing the 1619 project. There's some flaws in it. Now, I think there's some elements that you can use in school and use it with other information, but there's some flaws in the 1619 project. Okay, so once again, let's look at this. So the Negro Act was quickly finalized and approved after the Stono Rebellion. No longer would slaves be allowed to grow their own food. One of the crops that we grew even during slavery in some states, in some cities, in some colonies, it made money from was watermelon. There's a deep, see, we don't understand history. Half our people still think Willie Lynch historically existed. Willie Lynch never historically existed. The Willie Lynch letter is proven to be a fraud, and a lot of the taxes that are talked about in the Willie Lynch letter were not even historically used. It's garbage. No longer would slaves be allowed to grow their own food, assemble in groups, earn their own money, or learn to read. This is in the South Carolina colony. Some of these restrictions had been in effect before the Negro Act, but had not been strictly enforced. So let's look at so check this out from PBS.org, Public Broadcasting System. This deals with the terrible transformation. This is the Stono Rebellion of 1739. So we'll post this link here. And then there's an article from blackpast.org. There's an article from blackpast.org that deals with the Stono Rebellion also, 1739. Blackpast.org is a really good resource. They have about 6,000 pages of articles dealing with African history and African American history. Here is a historical marker dealing with the Stono Rebellion. And actually, I have this picture. Let me see if we can pull up this picture here. Comes up with the picture. Now, this is a historical marker in South Carolina. Now, how many people never heard of the Stono Rebellion before? How many of you did not know about the Stono Rebellion? Okay. So if we look at this historical marker, the Stono Rebellion of 1739, the largest slave insurrection in British North America, began nearby on September 9, 1739. About 20 Africans raided a store near Wallace Creek, a branch of the Stono River, a branch of the Stono River, taking guns and other weapons. They killed 2 shopkeepers. The rebels marched south toward promised freedom in Spanish Florida, waving flags, beating drums, and shouting liberty. Okay. So they were headed to Spanish Florida. They wanted to get land and get freedom. Hold on. They were headed to Spanish Florida, and they wanted to get land and get freedom. Let's pull this up. Okay, there we go. So this is a historical marker in South Carolina dealing with the Stono Rebellion. Okay, now there's an article also from blackpast.org. We'll look at that quickly, and then we'll look at the Negro Act of 1740. Okay, as they marched, overseers were killed and reluctant slaves were forced to join the company. The band reached the Edisto River, where white colonists descended upon them, killing most of the rebels. The survivors were sold off to the West Indies. Some survivors were executed. Some are going to be sold off to the West Indies. The recent August 1739 passage of the Security Act by the South Carolina Colonial Assembly may have also played a role. The act required all white men to carry firearms to church on Sunday. Thus, the enslaved leaders of the rebellion knew their best chance for success would be during the time of the church services when armed white males were away from the plantation. See, we were born at night, but we weren't born last night. We weren't stupid. Okay, now after the Stono Rebellion, now this is one of the few times when they're gonna run away in the daytime. Because I often talk about how why did most enslaved Africans who ran away at nighttime and not in the daytime? Because we knew we had a better chance of getting away and staying gone if we ran away at nighttime. This is one of the few times when it made sense to run away in the daytime on Sunday when all the white people in church and the white men who carry guns, they're all in church. It made sense to run away in the daytime. See, we weren't stupid. Okay, now, after the Stono Rebellion, South Carolina authorities moved to reduce provocations for rebellion. Masters, for example, were penalized for imposing excessive work or brutal punishment on slaves, and a school was started so slaves could learn Christian doctrine. A school was started so slaves could learn Christian doctrine. In a colony that already had more Africans than whites, the South Carolina Colonial Assembly also imposed a prohibitive duty on the importation of new slaves from Africa and the West Indies. Authorities also tightened control over the enslaved. The Assembly enacted a new law requiring a ratio of 1 white person for every 10 Africans on any plantation, and passed the Negro Act of 1740. The Negro Act of 1740 was passed on May 10th, 1740. May 10th, 1740. The South Carolina Colonial Assembly enacted a new law requiring a ratio of 1 white person for every 10 Africans on any plantation, probably a white man, and passed the Negro Act of 1740, which prohibited enslaved Africans from growing their own food, assembling in groups, earning money. They, rather than their owners, could retain or learning to read. Okay, so check this out from blackpast.org, dealing with the Stono Rebellion in 1739. Okay, now let's look at the passage of the Negro Act of 1740, okay, the next year in South Carolina. Passage of the Negro Act of 1740. All this is connected. Equal Justice Initiative, EJI.org, has a piece on this. South Carolina passes Negro Act of 1740 codifying white supremacy. On May 10th, 1740, the South Carolina Assembly, South Carolina Colonial Assembly, enacted the quote, bill for the better ordering and governing of Negroes and other slaves in this province, end quote, also known as the Negro Act of 1740. The law prohibited African people from growing their own food, learning to read, moving freely, assembling in groups, or earning money. It also authorized white enslavers to whip and kill enslaved Africans for being rebellious. This is the Negro Act of 1740. South Carolina implemented this act after the unsuccessful Stono Rebellion in 1739, in which approximately 50 enslaved people resisted bondage and grew up to 100, about close to 100. Okay, so we talked about all that. Okay. The Negro Act treated enslaved Africans as human chattel and revoked all forms of civil rights or human rights. The law served as a model for other states. Georgia authorized slavery within its borders in 1750 and enacted its own slave code 5 years later. In 1865, the passage of the 13th Amendment legally abolished. This is from the Equal Justice Initiative, so they still operate based upon this myth that the 13th Amendment is tied to mass incarceration. There's a loophole that re-enslaved Africans. That's not true. It did not. We dealt with that for 2 hours with Dr. Darrell Scott. So read the rest of this stuff here, okay? Check out the research the Negro Act of 1740. Research the Negro Act of 1740. All right, now, after the Negro Act of 1740, you have something called the Petition of the Free Sundry Moors of South Carolina in 1790. There's an article from Talking Points Memo. I was looking at some different sources for this. There's an article from TalkingPointsMemo.com. First person I heard talk about this was Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay. And Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay, I interviewed him back in 2010. He was one of my very first interviews. I want to interview him again. But he has an essay also in the book, Golden Age of the Moor, which is edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Who's Golden Age of the Moor? All right here. So Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay is one of the baddest scholars on the history of the Moors. And he has an essay, in this book right here, Golden Age of the Moor. You have Dr. John G. Jackson, Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Wayne Chandler, Jan Carew. They all have essays in this book here, Golden Age of the Moor. So what happened is, if we look at this article here, if this 1780 Southern politician fought Islamophobia, we can too. And they talk about the Petition of the Free Sundry Moors, which is tied to the Negro Act of 1740, which is tied to the Stono Rebellion of 1739. And I want to go, okay. So it says, let's start at the beginning. By the time of the American Revolution, 1775, a sizable Moroccan Muslim community known as Moors, in the language of the era, had developed in and around Charleston, South Carolina. Some of the community's members were likely former slaves, but many others had chosen to immigrate from Morocco, with which the U.S. had a so-called treaty of friendship, treaty of peace and friendship, 1787. Okay. Morocco indeed was the first African nation to recognize the new United States during the Revolution. Worried about being denied rights due to South Carolina's system of slavery, a group of Muslim Americans petitioned the state's courts requesting that they be recognized as white as in status, not white as in complexion, but white as in status. Okay. Now, there's another example of this that we see, white as in status for African people. That is dealing with Mustafa Hefney in 1978. Okay. Mustafa Hefney in 1978, who is Nubian, and he came from Egypt. He's Nubian. He's African ancestry. And when he came to the U.S., and I want to see one of the articles I have on this. When he came to the U.S., he went through immigration. He said when he went through immigration and they gave him his papers, he said they told him that you are white now. W-H-I-T. He said they told him you are white now. And he was like, what do you mean? Okay. So his status is white because people immigrating to the U.S. from Egypt, people immigrating to the U.S. from Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, they're all classified as white. Those immigrating from North Africa, they're classified as white by the federal government. Okay, so a lot of people don't know this. And then if you look at the census, if you look at the census, if you look at the census form and you look at the racial classifications, it shows you on the census form, it shows you the racial classifications. And I know in the 2010 census form, that was page 3, if I remember correctly. And it shows you what white means and who's classified as white. Let me see, do we have this here? Let me see, do we have the 2010 census form? I don't know if I can still pull it up here. Let me see something here. Hold on. Or we can look at, let me look at something here. I want to look at the racial classifications. Let me see something here. If I'm not sure if I can find it right now. But if you research 2010 census form and racial classifications, I had it bookmarked. I can't find it now. But if you look at the census form, and you look at the racial classifications, it is show that those those coming from the Middle East and North Africa are classified as white. Okay, and then if we look at the article here from this is from Detroit CBS Local. Okay, BET has an article also dealing with this as well. This talks about Mustafa Hefny. Detroit immigrant wants to be reclassified as black. This is Dr. Mustafa Hefny. This is from September 4th, 2012. An Egyptian immigrant who lives in Detroit is asking the U.S. government to classify him as black, not white. Okay, do you all see this? An Egyptian immigrant who lives in Detroit is asking the U.S. government to classify him as black, not white. Mustafa Hefny Mustafa Hefny has been trying to get the racial designation since the 1980s. He said, as a black man and as an African, I am proud of this heritage, Mustafa Hefny told the Detroit News for a story published. He said, my classification as a white man takes away my black pride, my black heritage, my strong black identity. Right? So white and black is not just phenotype, it's status. This is what this deals with. It's on the census form. A lot of people look at the census form and don't pay attention to what they're looking at. And I'm gonna try to go to census.gov and pull up the 2020 census form. I have the 2010 census form printed, but I want to try to pull up the I want to try to pull up the 2020 census form. I want to look at the racial classifications. It's like really important. And see, what happened was over time, who gets classified as white changes. Because there was a time when Italians and Greeks were not classified as white. It wasn't until like about the end of World War II in this country that Italians and Greeks started being classified as white. Uh, okay, let's look at this. This is 2020 census form. This is 2020 census form. If you Google, if you go to census.gov, U.S. Census Bureau, census.gov, search for 2020 census form. And actually, let me look at this here. Okay. And then you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You look at question 9. What is the person's race? Okay. Black or African American, American Indian, etc. Okay, let's look at here. See more. 2020 census questions race. To give the racial classifications, that's what I want. Okay, white. Let's blow this up here. Okay, white. The category white includes all individuals who identify with one or more nationalities or ethnic groups originating in Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. You see this, North Africa? Originating in Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. So on the census form, there is no classification for Arab. Arabs are classified as white. People, anybody immigrating to the U.S. from the Middle East is classified as white. There is no classification for Arab on the census form. They're classified as white because they're coming from the Middle East. Those coming from North Africa, like Mustafa Hefni, they could be black Africans coming from Egypt. They're classified as white by the U.S. government. That's their status. Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, okay, Libya, okay, those coming from North Africa are classified as white. Examples of these groups include, but are not limited to, German, Irish, English, Italian, Lebanese, Egyptian, Polish, French, Iranian, Slavic, Asian, and Chaldean. Chaldeans are classified as white. Chaldeans, you know, a lot of them in the African American communities, they're classified as white by the federal government. When they look at the classification of Black or African American, and they look at those coming from Africa, they're looking at sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, and they're classifying them as Black or African American. Example, okay, so the category of Black or African American includes all individuals who identify with one or more nationalities or ethnic groups originating in any of the Black racial groups of Africa. Examples of these include, but are not limited to, African American, Jamaican, Haitian, Nigerian, Ethiopian, and Somalian. So they're looking at what they call sub-Saharan Africa. The category also includes groups such as Ghanaian, South African, Barbadian, Kenyan, Liberian, and Bahamian. Okay, so read this. We'll post a link here. This is from the 2020 census form. Okay, this is from the 2020 census form, and this deals with the racial classifications. And it goes through and breaks down, and it shows you on the 2020, it shows you that the U.S. government classifies people from North Africa as white, regardless of skin complexion. They could be as black as Yaphet Kotto, and they still be classified as white. So if we go back and look at what happened to Mustafa Hefni, who's Nubian, he's from Egypt, he's Nubian, Black African, but he's classified as white by the federal government. So Mustafa Hefni, going back to the article from CBS Local Detroit, he said, as a Black man and as an African, I am proud of this heritage, he told the Detroit News. He said, my classification as a white man takes away my Black pride, my Black heritage, and my strong Black identity. Now, Dr. Mustafa Hefni is brown skinned with curly hair. The 61-year-old, not 61 at the time, this article is from 2012, I think it is. 2012, yeah. So he was born in Egypt and came to the United States in 1978. When he was admitted to the country, he was classified on government paper as a white person. Dr. Mustafa Hefni said. He said the government interviewer said, "You are white now. You are white now." And he is Nubian, which is an ancient group of Egyptians, ancient Kemites, considered more African than Arab. From the northern part of Sudan and the southern portion of Egypt. So the southern portion of Egypt and the northern portion of Sudan, in ancient times, that was called Nubia or Ta-Nehesi. Now, a white person is defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East, according to Directive 15 for the Federal Office of Management and Budget Standards for the classification of federal data on race and ethnicity. Is also on the census form. Mustafa Hefni said he was denied promotion because of his insistence that he is Black. He said, quote, "There are two versions of the ideology of white supremacy and Black inferiority, a hard version, which was prevalent in the 17th and 18th centuries, and a soft version was prevalent in the 19th and 20th centuries, and which continues to exist to the present." He said the hard version of this ideology argued that Negroes did not have a soul, had a tail, T-A-I-L, had a tail, and were only one link above the apes. The soft version, which continues to exist to the present, argues that Blacks are intellectually, culturally, and morally inferior to whites. He also said he lost out on a teaching position at Wayne State University, my alma mater, Wayne State University, in the early 1990s because it was a position designed for a minority, and he did not qualify because he's classified as white by the federal government. Read the rest of this article here. He filed a lawsuit in 1997 against the U.S. government to be classified as Black, but the case was dismissed. Mustafa Hefni also has taken his fight online, where an organization he co-founded, the Association of Black, Egyptian, Ethiopian, and Nubian Advocates, has posted a petition. Okay, I read the rest of this article here. But you get the idea. Detroit immigrant wants to be reclassified as Black. Okay, so see, we don't understand. I'm trying to explain to you. We don't understand the history, how all this stuff evolved. Well, we don't understand the history of slavery. I hear a lot of things that African Americans say about slavery. We don't understand the history. Most Americans are very ignorant of history in general. Okay, this is why the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center, Teaching Hard History of American Slavery, is so important. Teaching Hard History of American Slavery, because it documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools right now. And it has numerous recommendations on how to more correctly teach the history of slavery. You also have the attacks on critical race theory that's been taking place. We've been talking about that. The attacks on critical race theory. You have the attacks on the 1619 Project, even though they're awesome flaws. You have states that are trying to restrict what can be taught regarding history and systemic racism and things like this in school. Because last thing they want is for people to find out the truth. These are Republican-led efforts. Okay, last thing they want is for people to find out the truth. There was, let me see, there was the governor of Oklahoma just signed a bill. Governor Stitt signed a bill that prevents schools from teaching critical race theory. Roland Martin talked about this on his show today. And I think I saw an article about this. I think we posted an article a couple of days ago, something like this. Governor Stitt signs controversial. Let me flip over this. See, there's a whole cultural war taking place right now, and it ties into history. There's a whole cultural war taking place right now. Governor Stitt signs controversial bill into law to restrict teaching of certain critical race theories. This is from May 8th, 2021. He's the governor of Oklahoma. Governor Kevin Stitt has signed a controversial bill into law to restrict the teaching of certain critical race theories in Oklahoma. House Bill 1775 bans public schools from teaching specific topics on race and sex and prohibits sexual diversity training at colleges and universities. The governor said this bill does not restrict the teaching of important parts of Oklahoma history, such as the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. They don't want to teach that white people were oppressors. He said we have got to trust professional and professional. Okay. They don't want to teach about white supremacy. They really don't want to teach about systemic racism. Okay, so read the rest of this article. We'll probably talk about this on our show Tuesday. This was just signed into law in Oklahoma. All right, now if we go back, so I wanted to talk about that so we can better understand the petition of the free sundry Moors of South Carolina, because all this history is connected. Now, this is an article from BET.com that deals with Mustafa Hefny also. You can Google his name, you'll read the number of articles written about him. An Egyptian man's fight to be black. Mustafa Hefny has been on a decade-long fight to stop being called white. This is from September 13, 2012 from BET.com. All right, so I want to go back to the article from Talking Points Memo, because I wanted to lay down a foundation so people can understand the article from Talking Points Memo. This deals with the petition of the Free Sundry Moors of South Carolina and the Sundry Moor Act of South Carolina in 1790. Okay. Once again, name of this article: if this 1780s South Carolina, if this 1780s politician fought Islamophobia, we can too. This is from Talking Points Memo.com, written by Ben Railton, February 13th, 2015. So they talk about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. And it says some of the community's members were likely former slaves, but many others had chosen to immigrate from Morocco, with which the U.S. had a so-called Treaty of Friendship, okay, Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Morocco indeed was the first African nation to recognize the new United States during the Revolution. Worried about being denied rights due to South Carolina's system of slavery, a group of Muslim Americans petitioned the state's courts requesting that they be recognized as white. A group of Muslim Americans petitioned the state's courts requesting that they be recognized as white. A tribunal of judges led by prominent South Carolinian Charles Pinckney agreed with their petition, and the state legislature passed the Moors, M-O-O-R-S, the Moors Sundry Act of 1790, designating this Moroccan Muslim American community, quote unquote, white for purposes of the law. Designating them white for purposes of the law, meaning they wanted to make sure that if they had to go to court or something like that, they wanted to make sure that they were not governed by the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina. They wanted to make sure that they were not governed by the Negro Act of 1740, okay, in South Carolina. All right, so they petitioned and they won. Okay, so a tribunal of judges led by prominent South Carolinian Charles Pinckney agreed with their petition, and the state legislature passed the Moors Sundry Act of 1790, designating this Moroccan Muslim American community white for purposes of the law. That law was as complicated as race in American history has always been. It allowed members of this community to be counted more fully for state population and federal representation purposes. It also gave these Muslim Americans the opportunity to vote, to serve on juries, and to gain and enjoy the benefits of citizenship, even as Black Americans were largely denied those same rights. Because it dealt with their classification. Just like Mustafa Hefney's classification as white. See, it's not just, you're not just dealing with race, but you're also dealing with status classification. And that's what this is dealing with the Moor Sundry Act of 1790. It's dealing with status. It's dealing with legal classification, legal status, which then deals with how you're treated by the law, hopefully, in general. So the Moor Sundry Act of 1790 also gave these Muslim Americans the opportunity to vote, to serve on juries, and to gain and enjoy the benefits of citizenship, even as Black Americans were largely denied those same rights. The revolutionary history gets broader and deeper. The only passage in the body of the Constitution, as drafted in 1787, that references religion at all is the paragraph in Article 6 that makes clear that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office. This profoundly progressive phrase, written in an era when every other constitutional government around the world featured an official state religion, was drafted by none other than Charles Pinckney, of South Carolina. After the Constitution was drafted, Charles Pinckney was tasked with taking it before the South Carolina legislature for that state's ratification debate. During the debate, he was asked by one of the legislators about that exact Article 6 paragraph, and more exactly about whether it would mean that a Muslim could run for office in the United States. Charles Pinckney's answer was, yes, it does, and I hope to live to see it happen. His words are inspiring and a challenge to those who say they believe in inclusion today. How many white Christian elected officials today would say, I hope to see more Muslim Americans in elected office the way Charles Pinckney did? Okay, so read the rest of this here. Read the rest of this article here. But I was showing this because this article talks about the Moor Sundry Act of 1790 in South Carolina, which came about because of the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina, which came into existence because of the Stono Rebellion of 1739 in South Carolina. And May 10th is the anniversary of the passage of the Negro Act of 1740 in South Carolina. All right. That's enough radio for today. Be sure to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is some of the information we deal with. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Next class is going to be Saturday, May 15th. Class meets for 9 consecutive Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, we do the classes live. All the sessions are recorded. So if you miss class, you can go back and watch it over and over again. That's fine. Okay. If you miss class, that's fine. I don't take attendance. We're not going to call your parents. Okay. You can ask questions in class as a live text chat. You can see me. I can't see you. You can have your pajamas on. You don't have to worry about doing your hair or anything like that. You can watch from around the world. We just posted the link here It's also on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So we deal with ancient Africa. We deal with the Nile Valley region of Africa, ancient Kemet and ancient Egypt and Nubia and Ta-Nehisi and Ethiopia, all of that. And we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors and what the Moors take into Europe. We teach the teachings from ancient Africa into Europe, and these teachings are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Then we deal with what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And the way this whole history evolves, it's not how we actually think it happened. And in this country here, codified slave laws didn't exist in 1619. Those 20 and odd Africans on the White Lion pirate ship, they're going to be put into a form of indentured servitude. Now, it was not voluntary, because we know they were captured in Angola, what would be present-day Angola. They were captured by the Portuguese, and the ship that they're on, called the San Juan Batista, is going to be hijacked by English pirates. I talked about this with the extensive interview I did with Dr. Daryl Scott. Okay, so watch that interview I did with Dr. Daryl Scott, where we dealt with the 13th Amendment and mass incarceration and documentary 13. Well, we deal with all this in the class. Now, as soon as you register for the online course, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. And then you can also watch the 10 sessions that we did in February and March, because I ran the class starting in February for African American History Month. All that's archived, so you'll have access to that. Okay, what'd you say, Ruby, about Cash App? When you do it through Cash App, we post. I'll post the link here for Cash App also. But if you do it through Cash App, type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, $ the AHN show. That's if you type in the whole thing, and it'll show my name. It'll say Michael, and it'll show my picture there. Otherwise, we have the link here. You can click on the link for Cash App also. So this helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We're 6 days a week. The African History Network show. All right. If you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, if you want to support through PayPal, PayPal.me/TheAHNShow. Okay. We definitely appreciate all that. Remember, and all of my DVD lectures also, and DVD lectures and digital downloads are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're shipping out a lot of orders this week. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct your own behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.
Black Bees products are a collection of natural, organic, personal care products with an appreciation of nature and bees. Our philosophy is without bees, we have nothing. We are honoring our Nile Valley ancestors who understood the importance of bees. Black Bees created a high-quality, natural, organic personal care line that would be affordable to everyone. We hope you try and enjoy our Black Bees products line and come back and visit us at blackbeesproducts.com.
Digital Dandelion's Technical Solutions works with businesses like yours to create an operations manual for your business, which is something many businesses don't have. According to AARP, more than 30% of small business owners are over 50 years old. Many business owners want to retire by selling their businesses or by passing their businesses on to their children. However, according to Forbes Investment Advisors, many retiring owners' attempts to sell their businesses for retirement fail. You cannot sell your business without a business manual. Your children also cannot inherit your business because there is no way to run it. Your business does not have to die when you leave. Their business Bible products will give you the tools you need for a thriving business that can make you money even after you retire. Are you looking at increasing your business's annual revenue? Digital Dandelions can help you make at least $100,000 in annual revenue and expand your business. Speak with them today about solidifying your business. Visit digitaldandelions.com today and get a free 30-minute consultation. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Peace.